All right, if you're gearing up for your PCI Level 1 or 2 exams, you already know that some sections can absolutely make or break your score. Today, we're going to dive deep into two of the most critical ones, Section 6.3 on records and 6.4 on labs. Look, mastering these isn't just about passing a test, it's about understanding the very backbone of quality control in our industry. So, picture this. A PCI auditor walks into your plant, clipboard in hand. The pressure's on, right? Now, before they even look at a single piece of concrete, where do you think they're headed first? I'll tell you, straight to your records and your lab. Why? Because those two areas tell them pretty much everything they need to know about your plant's real commitment to quality. So here's our game plan. We're going to follow that auditor's path. We'll kick things off with the paper trail, then we'll head into the lab where all that data becomes real. We'll wrap it up with the most important exam takeaways and a quick knowledge check to make sure it all sticks. Let's get into it. So before an auditor even thinks about inspecting a form or testing a concrete sample, they have to establish the foundation. And guess what? That foundation is your documentation. They need to see a crystal clear, unbroken chain of evidence that proves you're in total control of your processes, from the second raw materials hit your yard to the moment the final product ships out. This right here is the heart of Section 6.3, unbroken traceability. The best way to think about it is like this. Every single Precast member has its own life story, a complete biography. Your records have to tell that story from beginning to end with no missing pages. Can you trace that specific coil of strand all the way back to its mill cert? Can you prove that concrete mix hit its strength requirements on a specific Tuesday? If you can do that, you're on the right track. Okay, so let's really get into this paper trail. Your records, they're not just paperwork. They're your number one defense in an audit. Every single document is a piece of evidence that proves you followed the PCI standards to the letter. When an auditor asks for proof, you don't give them an opinion, you hand them a record. According to the manual, the auditor's checklist really boils down to 5 critical categories. You've got your materials certs, your tensioning and concrete records, all your calibration logs, and of course, the inspection reports for every single member you produce. Let's take a closer look at a couple of these. Just look at the level of detail that's required for something like a tensioning record. An auditor wants the whole story, not just the final force, but the calculated force versus the actual force. Same thing for elongation. They want to see the specific jack ID, the strand coil numbers, and, this is huge, if you are out of tolerance, they need documented proof of exactly what you did about it. 6. I want you to remember that number. Just 6. It's one of the most frequently tested numbers from the manual, and it's all about the calibration interval, in months, for your plant scales. And as you can see, calibration isn't a one-size-fits-all deal. Your scales are every 6 months? Sure. Your tensioning systems? That's once a year. But look at your water measuring equipment. It's the strictest of all at every 3 months. Why? Because even a tiny error in your water-cement ratio can have a massive impact on strength. Knowing this table is absolutely critical for the exam. Now, this is a big one. There are absolutely no shortcuts here. PCI demands a documented pre-pour and post-pour inspection for every single member. Not just the first one off the line, not a sample from each day, every single one. This record is the final proof that each piece was checked and double-checked. Okay, so we followed the paper trail. Now let's go to the place where all that data is actually born, the lab. Your laboratory is where the claims you made in your records get physically proven. If your lab isn't compliant, then frankly, none of the data that comes out of it can be trusted. You know, an auditor can tell the story of your plant's quality culture just by walking into the lab. On the left, you've got a compliant lab. Clean, organized, every piece of equipment has a current calibration sticker, and safety is clearly a priority. Then on the right, well, you've got a non-compliant lab. It's a mess, records are missing, there are no manuals, and it's probably unsafe. Which story does your lab tell? Section 6.4.2 gives you a bare minimum list of equipment your lab must have to do the required tests. Seriously, think of this slide as a direct checklist for your exam. You need a compression machine for your cylinder brakes, all the basic fresh concrete gear, sieves for gradations, an accurate scale, a drying oven, and of course, proper curing and capping facilities. All right, we've gone through the records, we've inspected the lab. Let's boil this all down to the final notes an auditor would make. These are the absolute must-know points for your exam and for your day-to-day work. First thing, that link between the physical equipment in your plant and the paperwork in your office is completely non-negotiable. Every single calibrated tool has to have a current certificate on file. To an auditor, an expired record is the exact same thing as no record at all. It's an automatic red flag. And second, let's bring it right back to our main theme. Traceability is everything. It's not a suggestion. It's the core of the whole system. If you can't pull up the mill cert for the strand used in that beam, you can't prove you used the right stuff. If you can't find the inspection report, you can't prove it was checked. For an auditor, an undocumented action is an incorrect action, period. Okay, time for a quick knowledge check. Just a couple of rapid-fire questions to really lock in the key facts we've covered. You ready? First question up. We talked about this one. It's a critical number and it shows up on exams all the time. What is the maximum time allowed between calibrations for your plant scales? And the answer is 6 months. And just as a quick reminder, the other two you've got to know are 3 months for water meters and 12 months for tensioning systems. Those 3 are prime exam material. Okay, second question. Let's think about your lab's capabilities for a second. True or false? If there's a specific test your lab isn't set up to do, it's okay to use an outside private testing firm. That is absolutely true. Now, the key here is that the testing must get done. PCI lets you outsource testing you can't perform in-house, but, and this is important, you are still responsible for getting and maintaining those records from that third-party lab. So let's end with this one thought. All these procedures we've talked about today from sections 6.3 and 6.4, they aren't just about checking a box for an auditor. They are the fundamental building blocks that ensure the quality, the safety, and the durability of the structures we all depend on every single day. So the real question is, what are you going to check tomorrow to make sure that foundation is rock solid? Thanks for tuning in.